The years leading up to and during menopause are a rite of passage. The wise woman inside of us is calling to slow down, to take stock, to speak our truth, to burn away all that no longer serves us, ready for our next cycle of life. The good news is, with the support, community, connection, and most of all, sharing our stories and being truly seen and heard, we will travel through this powerful, sometimes painful, heroine's journey and out the other side. Welcome to the Menopause Podcast, real and raw stories of midlife and mental health. I'm your host, Kylie Patchett, menopause self-care coach and storyteller, and I am so glad you found us. Let's get on with the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the podcast. I have a treat for you today. This lovely lady is coming to us with a pseudonym, which she wrote her book under. So welcome, Patrice D'Amato. I got it right. Yay.
You did. Perfect.
Welcome, Patrice. How are you?
I'm so good. Thank you.
So good. And we will explain why you are actually under a pseudonym. But would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners, please?
Absolutely. So, as you said, my name is Patrice D'Amato. It is very close to my real name, being of Italian-American descent. I am a nurse and have been a nurse for going on 39 years, I think. Done a variety of things in nursing, everything from hospitals and brain surgery patients to teaching in a university. I taught nursing. And I had decided a couple of years ago to write a book about my experiences as a women's health nurse practitioner in abortion care. And we could talk a little bit about why I chose to write about abortion care. But it certainly has become a topic of great confusion and misinformation, at least here in the United States, and I think around the world everywhere as well.
Yeah, and we all watched. I was interested. I didn't know at what point in time the book came out in relation to that Roe decision. It was before, by the sound of it, because I think it was pending.
Just before. It was just breaking. They were uncertain about what would happen. I had no idea. Just the timing was.
Yeah, you mentioned it right at the end of the book, and I was like, I reckon this has not just quite happened. Otherwise, of course, you would have. No. Can I start with? I dived into your book. It's called A View from the Clinic. We should say that right out the front. And I didn't know what to expect. I think that I went in, and we were talking about this before we started recording, with this kind of preconceived notion that an abortion clinic would be mostly frequented by accidentally pregnant younger women who were seeking abortions. I'm very happy to say that your book does a brilliant job of challenging my very uneducated, uninformed stereotype. But I wanted to start with this paragraph because I think you've captured kind of what a lot of people are going to be thinking is like, why would you choose to do that? So you ponder this question. You say in the book, how does a moderately liberal, cisgender, heterosexual white woman with a newly minted master's degree as a nurse practitioner decide it would be a good idea to ditch her nice hospital job as a staff educator to work in that dreaded cesspool of hell at the abortion clinic? Quite honestly, I shocked even myself. Like most providers, I'd referred patients or taken care of women who'd had an abortion, but it was a little unsavory to think about. I thought that was such a good introduction because I was just like, I was sitting down on a Saturday morning. I thought, I'll just read a couple of chapters of this. No, I ended up sitting on my lounge and just reading it from beginning to end because you had me captured from the very beginning.
Oh, good.
And I think the way that you actually tell the stories, because I love people's stories. Like, this is why I have a podcast. It's why I'm a copywriter, all of those things. You do such a good job of showing so many different facets or types, class, all sorts of different patients that have come through the clinic. And you also do a fantastic job of kind of showing the personalities of some of the key kind of players in the clinic as well. But let's start with the beginning question. How and why did you decide? Because you write in the book, you kind of shocked yourself. You kind of did it and you were like, I did not see that coming.
It's so true. It's so true. I really didn't. I love to write, but I had never written that type of writing. I had done, professional journals and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So what actually happened is very funny. And I don't know if it's funny. So the Me Too movement, right?
Yes.
So I I started hearing more and more during the Me Too movement of people talking who had no freaking clue what they were talking about. And one day I listened to this politician, a married older man who is deciding, he was, I don't know, I was listening to something on television or something, and he was deciding that why on earth would we not tax women's sanitary products? He said, they're a luxury. It's a luxury, and we should tax these. And the interviewer said, wait, what? This is a luxury? How do what's your thinking that, women's tampons are a luxury? And he said, well, it's just like going to the bathroom. You go in and you bleed out, you push out that blood, you wipe yourself and go on. Why would you need these extra products?
Lordy.
And really, how there's always just that one moment where you're like, wait, no, I'm done. I'm done. Done. And I thought, okay, and you're a married man, so you don't even know what goes on in your own bathroom. And you're the one who's deciding that I'm going to have to pay extra taxes for these products based on your knowledge.
Yeah, lack thereof, yes.
Or lack thereof. But he said it with such authority. I think even the interviewer was just like, what?
But also, let's just pull to the surface. I'm sorry, do you have a uterus? Do you actually get an opinion about this conversation?
And you could, if you were, maybe if you were a gynecologist or at least an interested human being.
Yes, true.
Right?
That's true. The absence of the organ does not.
You can be informed and get the right. So something in me snapped, and I said for the 1,000th time, nurses need to speak.
Yeah.
We need to write. We need to speak. We need to tell people what we know. We have more street credibility than we realize. Nurses very much underplay themselves.
Yep.
Oh, or they're tired because they're running around. Most are women in this country, about 85% are women who, have kids and older family members that they're taking care of. They are caregivers by nature.
Yes.
And so these are people who, really undersell their ability and also don't often have the time to sit down and explain to the public what we know, what people need to know to make informed decisions. And so I started thinking, all right, well, I'm writing something. I have to do this. I can't sit here anymore and listen to this garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I thought about, it was so infuriating. And I was a women's health nurse practitioner for 8 years. So, I just was so frustrated. So I thought about, what did I want to write? And my experience was in abortion clinics. In women's health, as far as the women's health world goes. And so I thought, well, that would get people, wouldn't it? I mean, I really wasn't thinking about, it just so happened that, the Supreme Court did what it did just like 2 weeks after I was publishing the book. It all happened at the same time because I started writing like 3 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
So the timing was pretty uncanny for what was happening. I really wrote the book because I thought, okay, these are real stories. And I wasn't after like the right or the wrong of it, or pro-choice or pro-life. I really wanted to give people the full picture of what a nurse sees, what a healthcare provider sees when you walk into that clinic.
Yes.
And I don't think anybody else has done that. To any great degree. There's plenty of women coming forth telling their stories, their actual abortion stories. Yes. I was booted out of one group because I said, well, I didn't have an abortion, but I've been at hundreds of abortions. And they said, no, it's not the same.
You're not qualified.
And I agree with them. It's not the same. It is it's a different journey, but it's unique. And being able to see it through my eyes that saw it, day in, day out, hundreds of patients. And so many of the stories are so similar. I thought, no, this could be a good one. Be a fly on the wall. Learn what I do and how I've grown through this experience.
You talk about in the book a lot of things that like challenged you as well in the journey, like some of the things that you saw that like you share, the things that are popping to my mind, you share everything from, women who have multiple children already that are having abortions because they're not able to have another child in their...
They're the majority of women having abortions, by the way. That is the majority.
Didn't know, wasn't aware of. So completely against my stereotype. You also talk about, and we were talking before we started recording, like my background's in forensic biology. So you also talk about abortions that have been as a result of rape or as a result of incest, horrible incest. Some of those stories and that, it's quite, I know cases like that firsthand, and it's hard. It was hard to reread those things to be reminded that there is actually families where that is just a very normal thing that happens generationally again and again and again, even if social services are involved, that it's just part of the kind of culture and expectation. But you talk a lot about some of the challenging aspects because you were working in a hospital system. I actually really appreciated too you sharing the reality of being a hospital nurse and it's almost like the drudgery of being in a system that has so much pressure on it. You don't have enough time to actually really, really be with a patient the way that you would probably like to. You hear the same stories all the time, so you get quite desensitized, which also we were talking about similar sort of thing with the forensic end of things. Like you just, I don't know, the stories become all one big ball of like, I've heard this kind of vein before. And so you get that kind of desensitizing. And so when you decide to go and apply for the job in the abortion clinic, like what can you talk about, like what was the kind of process? Like, did you just go, I'm bored of a hospital, I'm going to do something very different?
Well, I sort of did. I was working at that point. I had left the intensive care unit because I really didn't want to. I like talking to people, and I was in a brain trauma unit, so
that's
patients didn't talk.
Not a good fit. Actually, you just reminded me. My husband used to say, this is my wife, she must have a scintillating personality. She worked in a morgue and then she worked in sleep studies. And I'm like, again,
you seem very outgoing. I don't know.
Well, that's the thing, like complete disconnect. Patrice, you and I parallel stories.
Right.
Anyway, sorry, continue.
Well, no, it wasn't even that. I think it was the futility of the work I was doing.
Yes.
So there's a lot of futility in doing, working in a hospital. You get yes, there's, you can work in labor and delivery or work in pediatrics or some happy place, although pediatrics is not really a happy place.
No.
But by and large, you're working with old people, really sick, frail people, and to put them in intensive care units it's inhumane and it's stupid half the time. And I think I love critical care nurses and physicians, but it's just not my passion. To me, there's so much futility and there's just a lot of saving when we really should be looking at letting go.
The life expectancy has become
helping. It's all about saving lives, and there's just it's so limiting to the human experience. For me, it was so limiting for me to the and I say in the book too that hospitals are very artificial places. You don't see people in their own clothing. We take them and we put them in our little gowns, and everybody has to march to our drum. And I always had sort of that sense that someday I'd really like to get out of this artificial environment that serves us maybe more than it serves half the patients that are there. And see who they really are, how they got here, and how we can really move people forward far beyond this encounter. So yeah, I really did. I finished my master's degree and I started looking, at that time it was like the wanted ads, and I thought anything but a hospital. I just I don't care. And as I said in the book, the book, I want people to know that it's actually really funny too. There's a lot of really funny things.
I wanted to make that point because you may be thinking, oh, what am I getting myself in for? I was, to be honest, thinking, oh, okay, I've got some trepidation. And I was very pleasantly surprised because it was, there's heartbreaking moments, there's really lighthearted moments, and you really get a feel for the whole range of characters in all of the stories. And I think I would challenge anyone to read it and then be able to say, I am 100% pro-choice or I am 100%, pro-life.
Exactly.
I'm also astounded by the fact that there's actually people that are pro-abortion. So you explained that in the book. So
yes,
I did not understand. So pro-abortion as in everybody should abort every baby.
Well, that not exactly.
Not that
it's more like selection. It's
even worse than everybody.
Yes, they should. Yes, it's sort of like like a selective process. And truly, some of these people, that I meet or have met, they're very burnout people.
Yeah.
And they look at the population explosion and they look at, those kinds of things, and they're just like, stupid people shouldn't breed.
Yeah.
It's kind of that Darwin
the Darwin Awards.
The Darwin Awards, it's like stupid people just keep reading, and please let's take this for you. And yes, that's an extreme view, but it is not unheard of, really.
But I would really challenge someone who is firmly in one or the other of the extremes of the what's that, continuum.
Yes.
To read your book and be so black and white in either direction.
And that's the point. That was so my point was, we sanitize, on one hand, we're sanitizing things and saying, oh, it's great. Take these pills. You'll be fine. Da, da, da. That's a little cavalier. And then on the other hand, you have the people who are life at every cost. And it doesn't matter, the mother's health isn't as important. So yes, my goal really was to bring all of it to light so that people can do their inner work. People need to do their inner work. It is the only way out of this quandary.
Yes.
That is what I say again and again. This is an inside job.
Yeah.
And until you can really do, self-examine and look at your biases, we will continue the way we are.
Yeah. And do you mean in terms of, it's judgment, isn't it, really? When it comes down to, if we want to get down to the root cause of this huge divide that we're in, it's judging other people through the lens that we have, that we believe, or we whatever, our version of the world, our construct of the world, which is just a construct, as I've just been talking about with our guests before.
Exactly.
And when our view doesn't agree with someone else's view, it's that oppositional, if I'm right, you must be wrong kind of thinking that causes all of the big divides. And war and all of the other things that are wrong with the world. What do you think, looking back at your time in the clinic, do you think that you went into it kind of like naive, or like what was your experience versus your expectation? I'm interested to see.
Oh my gosh, I was so naive.
Did you have any idea?
So naive.
Yeah.
I had no idea. And I didn't work in women's health. I did regular adult care in hospitals for 14 years before doing this. And I actually became, an adult and geriatric nurse practitioner. But this job came up. I was qualified as an adult practitioner. And then I subsequently got a specialization in women's health for a brief while, and then I got bored with women's health. It's too narrow for me. My world is just too big. But I had no idea. Unless there's no way you can go into this with any real expectations other than if you've worked with real people, because the gamut of people's sexual expression is beyond the scope of any one person's point of view. And this is all about sexuality and relationships or no relationships or physical situations or, you know, it just runs the gamut. And you just see, I said this working there, to me, it was like being at the deli counter the day before Christmas. That's how varied the people are. The people you see, you, again, like you, I totally thought, Kylie, I was like, oh, they're teen girls and, fallen women, like, who had an affair. Oh my God, no. Okay, there were some, but mostly, I mean, everyone, the bus drivers, the cashiers, the CEOs,
the mums from school,
every day, all. I never saw a more diverse group of people in my life than when I would walk in the lobby of the abortion clinic. Everyone, people I knew, surprise. I'll see you at soccer practice next week.
That's a bit tricky.
Oh, it was tricky. Oh, yeah.
Can we talk about, because I feel like, I mean, I can't talk about other countries, but I think in Australia, or my sense is in Australia, that we still have a kind of frame of abortion that we don't really talk about it outwardly. Like, it's not like, I think there's a lot of barriers that have been broken, especially recently. So like the Me Too movement, opened up the end of the like completely inappropriate sexual conduct and the power and all of that end of things.
Right.
Then we've been talking much more about periods and menstrual cycles and, living cyclically as a woman and all of those things. In my kind of field, much more about perimenopause, menopause, and all of those transitional states that happen in changes in, hormones, et cetera, across a woman's lifespan.
Right.
But I feel like abortion is still very taboo, in Australia at least. Would it be still in the States?
Everywhere. There is not a place in the world, to my knowledge, where you could, be, I don't know, running errands and or go to church or wherever community center you go to, and people say, oh, how are you doing? I heard you had an abortion. Let alone even, oh, I heard that, you had a miscarriage. Everything okay? No one can talk about that. How was your hip replacement? Perfectly fine. Right? Or even I find a level of comfort among men, oh, how'd that prostate surgery go? But, do you even ask a woman about her ovarian cyst or, so even just losing a pregnancy, which I did have a miscarriage myself and spoke about that. But that alone, people, a lot of people had known that I was pregnant. And then when I wasn't pregnant, but they said, oh my gosh, how are you? And say, oh, how's the pregnancy? Oh, I miscarried. And then, the horror and the shame on the person's face. And they're like, oh, what did I say? Oh my gosh. So could you imagine, my vision, my dream is of a world where we could go, and see, a good friend and they'll say, how was your abortion? How did that go for you? How are you? Because I can tell you, even after a miscarriage, I was the loneliest woman in the world. I was so lonely.
Because
unless somebody else had been through it, right?
Yeah. Anything that we don't talk about disconnects us.
Right. Yeah. 1 in every 4 women in the United States will have had an abortion by age 45.
I actually meant to look up the statistic in Australia. I would say it would be very similar. Excuse me.
It used to be 1 in 3.
Interesting.
Up till 15 years ago, 1 in every 3 women. So here we all are, right? Having these experiences. And it's even between us. It's such a taboo subject. And I just don't really know why that is and why we feel embarrassed or ashamed. I'm hoping it's like Me Too, where women were, and myself included, ashamed to say, oh, that guy, just grabbed my ass. Or your first reaction is to freeze and sort of curl up in a ball and pretend it didn't happen. And we're like the same, we can have sneeze.
Sorry.
I could see a sneeze coming.
I was trying to mute my microphone. 8:38. Oh, sorry.
So anyway, what a world it would be, right? If we had the opportunity to be able to talk about this, because it is a loss. An abortion is an elective,
yes.
I'm sorry, let me say this the other way. A miscarriage is a spontaneous abortion.
Yes. You talk about that.
So you didn't choose it, but you still had an abortion.
Yes.
Yeah. So as opposed to an elective abortion, but it's all the loss is very real, and it's similar. Just because you decided to do this, you need to be able to go through all the stages of healing, and we have so much that's not healed because we can't talk about these things in a rational, comforting, healing way.
Yeah. And I think too, like anything that we're not, any story or any experience that we have any level of shame about, which then stops us sharing, the shame festers in the dark.
Yes.
Like it's only when we start sharing and processing, doesn't mean we have to be telling every single person, but I also think that the whole topic of abortion is this collision of, we have this stupid idea about what a good mother is, which is at odds with having an abortion, because a mother should do everything for her child possible to blah, blah, blah. And often the unsaid expectation is at the expense of yourself. That's a good mother is a sacrificer. A good mother is the caretaker. A good mother is the juggler, like all of that kind of stuff, which, all power to the patriarchy, good way of keeping us in our place, right?
Right.
But there's that story. Then there's the shame that we may or may not put on ourselves. And then the kind of taboo, it's a collision of so many different things and I guess one of the other things that may be going on is if we don't talk about it and therefore we don't know someone's viewpoint, and then we share that we have chosen to have an abortion, then we run the risk of, I don't know, it's kind of like politics, right? It's safer not to speak about it.
For sure.
I guess, and because it can be such a polarizing topic, I think.
Oh my God, I couldn't talk about my job. I mean, with, again, my kids were starting kindergarten.
Yes.
And, you're starting to meet all the moms in the school district.
Yeah.
And I had to be very, very careful just to protect them, because I certainly would be ostracized even by people who believed in what I was doing. You don't really want to associate with that. It's icky, right?
Yeah.
So even just working in it, let alone, I think having one, you can have a level of privacy for sure.
Yes.
But, working and choosing to work in that, it's very polarizing to admit that.
You talk about arriving at work, and there was often, or always, I'm not really sure what you said, but often protesters, leading into the building, etc. And you talk about a gentleman who was older, and he was there consistently, and even though he was an anti-abortion protester, or pro-life, let's say that rather than anti-abortion, pro-life protester, he also became almost a bit protective of you guys. And so when there was more extreme or violent or whatever threatening protesters, he would be, try to be a bit of a buffer, I guess, is kind of how I understood it. It's so interesting, isn't it? It's like you talk about him, and you kind of, there's almost like a fondness of like, and you say something like, I can respect the fact that he has an opinion that is different to mine, and he feels strongly enough about it to kind of stand up for it, but he does it in a way that does no harm to other people, I guess. And I think really, if I'm understanding you correctly, when you say, there's healing to be done, it's really about that, isn't it? It's like, I can have my opinion, you can have your opinion, and I don't have to be opposed to you just through definition that your opinion and my opinion differs.
Right. Well, but yes, that's exactly it. The problem is that, if you are a pro-life person, you the thought of destroying a potential life
Yes.
or what they believe is an actual life, even though that is a very new
Yes.
Philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
So the history alone is just
Yes.
fascinating on
Yeah,
this.
it
The
is.
church did not believe that an egg and a sperm, the moment it fertilized, it was a human.
No.
That's very, very new.
And then there's some
And even
weird,
here,
sorry, I was
oh,
going
go
to say
ahead.
there's
No.
some weird thing in the book about a female becomes a life at 40 days and a what I'm
Yes.
like, what
And they still believe.
made this
Oh,
rule
they
up?
still believe that. I just was driving by the clinic the other day and
Yeah.
somebody had their sign up, yes. So it came from well, a lot of the original tenets, yeah, came
Mm-hmm.
from the fifth century. It's the Catholic
Yeah.
Church. And it
Early,
was
yeah.
oh no, I'm sorry. This part actually came from Aristotle. So how
Oh, okay.
Aristotle decided this, I don't know. But yes, males are become ensouled, like a soul
Mm-hmm.
is enters
Mm-hmm.
at
Mm-hmm.
80 days gestation, and for a
Yes.
female, no, I'm sorry,
No,
40
other way.
days for a male, 80
Yes.
days for female,
Takes us
which I
twice
love.
as long to find a soul. I was just like, I'm
Or
saying to
to
my
be
husband,
legit.
I was on the couch. He's trying to watch something on his headphones and the iPad, and I'm like, listen to this shit. Whacking him and listen to this
But
crap. Who
it's
made this
true. And I
bloody?
just saw
Oh,
somebody with a protester the other week with the sign, 40 days, 40. I mean, you don't even know what, you can't gender them at that early anyway.
no,
But I
exactly.
was like, do you know where that came from?
Mm.
It's like, eating fish on Friday. I'm not to be mean or anything, but like,
Yes,
do you know where that came from?
yes,
Or are you just following rhetoric? Like,
hmm
what
yeah,
are you
yeah, yeah,
doing?
yeah, exactly. And then that begs the question: if you don't know where it's from, you have made a decision to choose to believe that. And I have made a decision not to choose to believe that. I have a different belief system. So we're back to the,
Right.
and I guess I don't know. I'm trying to be I don't
Balanced.
know how you say without an opinion, but I
Yeah.
think it's safe for me to say I don't even really need to be safe. Where I'm going is I don't want to be polarizing in the way that we're talking about this. But to
Right.
me, my stance is to believe that every woman should have choice.
Yeah.
So then, therefore, by
Right.
definition, then they, should have
Right.
access
So,
to the
right.
ability
So
to,
it really does come down to, although we talk about being pro-life and pro-choice,
yes,
and there are nuns that are saying, no, you're pro-birth, you're not pro-life, because there is no economic follow through. If you save, the pregnancy, uh, what are you doing to
yeah,
provide for, a human being to grow and develop in a really, beneficial way for themselves and the world around them? And
mm-hmm.
this is what I'm very worried about. 1 in 3 American women doesn't have access to abortion right now. And so there's a lot of data. There was a huge study out of University of California.
Mm-hmm.
It was a long study. You'll appreciate it. It's called the Turnaway Study, and they looked at women who were allowed to have an abortion and those that were turned away, and they followed
Yes,
them for 10 years to see. And I think I did talk about that in the book, but the long-term consequences of women not being able to make the best decisions for themselves are
yeah,
devastating
mm-hmm.
to them, to the children that they already had, and to the children that they end up
Yes,
having.
yes,
So we're going to see some very interesting dynamics, 10, 20 years from now,
mm.
from the result of all of these
As a
decisions.
direct
But
result.
I do, yeah. And so,
Mm.
like, and I get it that these people just feel they've really found a mountain to die on that is no different than the Crusades, no different than a holy war. What could you latch onto that really grabs your heart,
Mm.
other than, saving the unborn? I
Yes,
call this the time of the fetus, the holy war of the womb.
time of
That's
the
where we
fetus.
are.
There's your
It's
podcast
fetus
title.
worship. Yes, it's like fetus worship, and I can get into that, and I can
Mm.
sink my teeth into it and be
Yes,
passionate about something, because we don't get to do holy wars anymore. So you've got to find one, and this is what
that's
people
so
found.
true. That's so true. I love that you talk a lot in the book about the history of abortion, the fact that it is actually readily done, readily available for thousands of years. And then there's this introduction of, I guess it's like the birth time of allopathic medicine, isn't it? So we go from the snake charmer kind of, healer
those
people.
Witchy midwives, get rid of them. We're
exactly.
going to deliver babies in hospitals by good doctors.
Correct. So we lock it all down. And we say, no, this is dangerous. We're going to, systematize everything. And that comes back to like, is a hospital environment even a real healing environment? No, it's not by definition, because it's clinical and it's artificially lit and it's blah, 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 blah. Anyway, that's a whole other conversation. But you talk a lot about, and then there's this swing of like, okay, then actually what I also want to talk about, which is linked to what I want to say now, is the education in schools and the fact that still in 2023, the majority of schools are not doing decent sex education.
Is that true in Australia as well?
Well, see, I'm a biologist, right? By trade, I'm sure you were like this with your kids. So my kids were like over-educated from like 2, with the proper anatomical names for everything. And they're like, we have people in our family that still do the PP thing. And I'm like, no, it's a penis. You don't call your elbow your wawa, so we don't call that a PP. I just don't understand, because that in itself creates shame around body parts that we should have equal connection and contact with. Anyway, my kids who are 18 and 19 had very little sex education, and they were done. There were sessions done. Yeah, it was just very clumsy, like girls and boys separate. And only sort of cherry picking, like they all put a condom on a banana. I'm like, that's great, but do we know about, anything to do with the attraction and like it just like you were missing out big chunks of biology, so kids don't really understand. Yeah,
they're not sex health. They're not sexual health educators. No. Usually they're gym teachers here. Yeah. And I think, oh my Lord, what crazy.
I know, the softball teacher is telling us about peepees. Yeah, probably.
Right.
Who knows?
Right. And they're terrified. They hate having to teach that. And they're not trained to the same depth as a sexual health.
Yeah, exactly.
And they're amazing at what they do. And so it's curious to me. I didn't know Australia was probably, you're a little more progressive. I think people here would fall over if there was a banana and a condom in a public school setting here.
Well, I don't even know whether that was part of the curriculum. I just remember that the teacher so this was at a state, government high school. When my girls both later went to private girls' schools, and there was a little bit more cycle education rather than understanding their own kind of
menstrual cycle, cycle,
that type of thing, which we certainly didn't get at school. So at least in a generation, we're improving that. But I think if we're not starting from the very beginning with people who are connected to their bodies and aware of their own sexual health and preferences and all of those things, like we're setting up people to not understand at the beginning of life.
Right.
And unless you have unless you're part of a friend group or a profession that sees more and more of that sort of I know nurses are very I've seen everything, because you're exposed all the time, right? So it just becomes, but unless you're someone who's willing to talk about those things that aren't necessarily talked about in families, certainly my parents did not do any, my dad was 55 when I was born. So I'm lucky I didn't have a chastity belt, I reckon. He was I'm talking 3 generations different. So he used to get funny with me if a boy, I went to a girls' school, but there was a boys' school kind of across the road. If one of my friends who were boys rang on the phone, my dad would have an absolute conniption.
Oh, my goodness.
Because that was he was calling on me. And I'm like, no, we're friends.
We're just friends.
Literally just friends. Never, ever, So I certainly didn't get any kind of education in that end of things from my parents. And, I just think I love that you cover the history and the ways that decisions have been made, even legally. And I hope that what we're seeing is just one extreme of the pendulum, and that we will come back, to somewhere that's
Yeah,
a little bit
I
more
think so.
pro-choice, but I
I think
hope so.
young people are done with this bullshit.
Yeah,
Sorry, but they are.
100%.
They're just like, I'm sorry.
Mm.
No, we're not doing this. So the people making these decisions right now are old.
Yes.
They're white.
Yep. They're male, usually.
And they're male
Mm-hmm.
mostly. I mean, you do have a lot of women, who really buy into this.
Yeah.
But it is patriarchy. Make no mistake.
Of
It's
course it is.
patriarchy. And,
It's keeping
you
women in their
know,
place.
right. It is. It is. So, yeah. So, on the one hand, and I do say that, pro-life people in their purest form are idealists in a very messy world,
Yeah.
that they, can say, oh, the miracle of life, and we have to, but that's not really, but who's housing that
Yeah.
it's the patriarchal misogyny, keep women down. Holy crap, we can't let women make these decisions for
Oh God,
themselves.
no.
Yes. So it's really an interesting, like, little capsule that's housed in, the much bigger one that
Yeah.
we're all
Yeah,
experiencing.
yeah. And I think too, like, I look at my daughters at 18 and 19, and they're so much wiser to the systems of oppression that are in place.
Yes,
Like,
they
so
are.
much more. I feel like when I was growing up, and I grew up, middle class, white family, Australia, suburb, kind of very average-ish, but I certainly wasn't aware of the fact that I was living in a bubble of,
No.
white, cisgendered, black, like all of the things that are being brought into the light. And I think every time I say something and one of my girls says, "Hey, do you realize?" I'm like, oh, this is so good, because we need
So
the,
good.
the challenging of because I'm still inside of that bubble. And as much as I would like to say, I'm not racist, I'm not this, I'm not this, that all of these unconscious biases that I've always had, because that's what I was brought up with and that's what my environment was, all of those things are still playing out in the background. Of course they are.
Me too. I would love to say that I've got it together, and I don't. My kids and young people teach me so much.
Yeah. And it's good. And I think that, eventually the old white men making decisions are going to be dead. So hopefully in the next generation. And I don't know whether, is it the same in the States when we go to elections here, more and more there's younger people getting involved in the political landscape, whereas I feel like there was almost a bit of an apathy. Like we have compulsory voting here.
Oh.
Yeah, 100%. So as soon as you're 18, you're on the electoral roll and you have to, and otherwise you're fined. And I mean, there's positives and negatives. The positive is, do you get a better, overview of the whole population? But the negative is, if you don't really want to vote, you just informally vote and put Mickey Mouse or nothing on your form and whack it in the box.
Right, because you were forced.
Yeah,
it wasn't a privilege. It was a forced situation. Yeah, that's interesting.
So when I was a teenager and into my 20s, a lot of my friends were just informally voting or couldn't give a hoot. And I'm not a political animal at all. I don't understand politics. It's never interested me, which probably means I'm just being ignorant. It does, let's be honest.
It's infuriating, though.
Yeah, I know. But now I feel like the young people they're like, I have a vote. I get a right to say this, and this bullshit, exactly like you were just saying, this system of oppression, this bullshit that you've been doing for the last however many generations ends with us. I think that's a brilliant thing, because it's like all of these structures will, I mean, it's a long way before when patriarchy.
I was writing the book, and I thought I knew that there was a possibility that our Roe versus Wade would be overturned, and I thought of the young women that I saw, and I do believe, were thinking like, "But this is a no-brainer. Of course, that's not going to happen." And yet here they are confronted with this in outrage and disbelief, and in a way, that's a good thing, to say, don't ever take for granted that you're going to be able to live your life, in a meaningful way.
Yeah.
That somebody would take privileges away from you that we, the women about, 10 or 15 years older than me fought so hard for.
Yes.
So they are waking up and saying, "Excuse me, we're not doing this." So good for them.
Point to make, because anger is such a and again, the lady that I just spoke to this morning, the trauma researcher, we were talking about the anger, the emotion of anger, and the fact that it's a very energizing emotion. It creates you setting boundaries. It says, no, I'm not available for that. You will not treat, like there's a lot of good that can come from anger that's in response to what's happening, not out of proportion or through a trauma response. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think that that's a good point. That I certainly, I know watching from Australia. See, the other thing that, and this again is probably my stereotype of the States, even though I lived there for a very short amount of time. Like obviously I was only in one state. Two actually. So it's in Oregon State and New York, like New York.
Okay,
City.
well, you got to.
Yeah, it's kind of
different, very different,
extremes,
contrasting.
Very, very different cultures. I love Oregon. Yeah. I loved New York, but I could not live there. But as an observer from Australia, looking at US landscape and particularly politics around Trump and everything, like there was lots of things that happened that I think a lot of Australians were very surprised about, and I don't think we kind of appreciated the size and the strength of lots of very polarized political viewpoints over there, because I think here we have a lot less, like we're very much more in the middle in all of our, most of our options with our politicians. Like we don't really have such a big, like you're either a Republican or a Democrat. Or like we just don't really have that to that extreme. And so I think like we were all looking going, what the hell just happened? Like how did, it seemed like a no-brainer that of course.
We all thought that too.
Yeah, well, but there's sections in the States that absolutely didn't think.
No, that's correct.
They were like, this is the right person for the job. And there's huge proportions of, and including some of my relatives. Anyway, it's a whole other kettle of fish. But I think you're right. There's something to be said for having the belief that, of course, that couldn't happen. That worst case scenario in my head, of course, that couldn't happen. Oh, shit. Okay.
It now can, and it did.
Yeah.
I don't know if complacency just comes, complacency comes through several generations, and then something, shakes people out of their comfort zone and wakes them up. And this generation of kids, just the pandemic and the, take the patriarchal stuff, and it's there. They have really been shaken from their beds, haven't they?
100%. And I think I love the fact that, again, coming back to like, my little bubble that I grew up in, I love the fact that that we're in a generation where what are your pronouns? How do you want to be, referred to? What's your identity? That there's even opportunity to express that part of yourself, because I cannot imagine having to live in a society that didn't accept something that you very much were in yourself, but have to kind of mask that all the time. And it's like, that's the definition of illness, right? When you can't be yourself, like the dissonance that is created from that. Like that's traumatic.
But we've done that. We have done that for women.
Taking
it back to abortion, right?
Yeah.
Like, so you're a woman who's had an abortion. I had a patient the other day who was in her early 40s, I'll say probably around 41, and she had had 18 pregnancies.
Wow.
Right? And so this is like, your jaw drops, right?
My jaw is dropping right now.
And this is not the only patient I've seen this. People who have had, 12, 13 pregnancies, and they're in their 30s. So this is real. And, we just, again, living in our little bubble, I'm looking at her chart and her history, and there was a show on here called, I forget what it was called, the Family with 17 Children.
Yes.
Show. So this is okay, like this is a reality, and I'm talking to these people, and I could tell you that that's real. This woman was like 43, and she had this was her 18th pregnancy.
Wow.
So and we can't get our head around things because we don't talk about them
and
we don't learn from people. And I wouldn't be able to, it's not something that you would be able to talk to somebody about that we're meeting in conversation. Even that, oh yeah, I've had 3 kids, I've had 4 miscarriages and 2 abortions. Like, so we're all repressed wearing our masks, and that's just one example. Being of a gender persuasion that's different, we're all wearing so many masks still, and it is an exciting time to be alive. Because we are starting to really question that and be brave. I look at these kids and they're just so brave.
They are, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so
it's amazing.
I see this generation as way more accepting of lots of different points of view. So, coming back to original, it's like, we don't agree. And it's like, they cannot agree and be very happily at peace with the fact that, and also not only that, they're curious about another point of view. And they're very happy to challenge their preconceived notion or question their preconceived notion. Right. Whereas I feel like I'm still living out things that, I was taught as a kid that I've never really questioned because that's just the way it was. Kind of like the Me Too thing. Like, I've got so many examples of completely inappropriate sexual behavior in Queensland government in the early 90s. Like, I was told by, I'm sure I've told this story on podcasts before, but I was told by my boss, who also said in court once that, of course, a woman could feel a hair next to a tampon in her vagina. So going back to your original, okay. I'm like, I beg your
Spoken with
pardon?
Authority.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, do you have a vagina?
Maybe that's the size of his penis.
Well, maybe. I don't know.
He's hoping you can feel that. That was really mean. I'm sorry.
That's all right. But it does, small-mindedness brings out that sort of reaction, doesn't it? But anyway, he once said that my tits were too big and my mouth too loud to get anywhere in his lab. Hey, gorgeous. We interrupt this gold for a delicious invitation. If your whole body has been whispering more lately, more voice, more truth, more satisfaction, more clients of the soulmate variety, more cash, more you, then this invitation is for you. Potent, my sister mind is officially open. This is my high touch, holy fuck, I'm ready sister mind for rebels in good girl clothing who are done outsourcing their power and diluting their magic to fit into someone else's business formula. If you have been craving a space where your strategy, your voice, and your energy all get to be offered, honored, refined, and amplified, this is it. Inside of Potent, you'll get my eyes on your business every single week, copy mentoring, and that is for brand copy and content storytelling that turns your truth into client catnip, energetic recalibration that helps you unhook old learned limitation patterns, keeping you quiet, not being seen, not being heard, real-time, high-touch, one-on-one coaching that actually sees the bigness of your vision, and the kind of sisterhood that does not flinch when you show up in your full, messy, brilliant, phoenix rising from the ashes glory. This isn't surface level support. It's deep, potent, paradigm shifting work that changes who you are as a woman in business and a woman in life. We start in August. Early open access is open right now. For the month of June 2025, inside of this early access open doors period, you will receive juicy bonuses, extended payment plans, and access immediately to my entire library of storytelling gold. You'll find all the juicy details at kyliepatchett.com/potent. And we fill spaces, and there's only 10 of them, and more than likely only 5 by the time you listen to this, because by that time I will have offered them to the existing cohort, the beautiful original OG circle. We do actually take applications on a first come, first served basis. So come and apply, and let's get back to the magic of the episode.
Wow.
But that's just the way it was, right? If my kids were told that now, they'd be like, off to HR, instant dismissal. You can't treat me like that.
Yeah.
Actually,
and we did.
Like
we just were like, oh.
Yeah. Well, you know, hospitals, doctors and nurses, I mean, far out, man. That's a cesspool.
And nurses, you know, there's still the pornography. I mean, the Halloween industry with the sexy nurse thing. It's a big thing.
I know.
Still. I don't know.
Also in Australia. Weird. Anyway. Sorry, we've gotten off topic so many times, but I'm enjoying our conversation. I'm interested to something that there was so many different parallels in the book between like my forensic career and the nursing end of things in terms of that developing like the coping strategies of either having like, you know, a hard shell or a, you know, gallows humor or a whatever, because you kind of that desensitization happens and it's the way that we start to kind of cope with things. I'm interested to hear what are some of the things that you found difficult to cope with or found traumatic. Were they what you expected, or were they those weird things that just kind of sideswipe you?
I think it was a mix of both, and it continues to be, because I do still work and I work remotely. I just handle emergencies and problems after the procedure patients can call. So it's kind of a mix. Some of the things that you would expect to be very traumatic, like an 11-year-old who, you know, was raped by her brother, and you know, they're not coming in because the parents thought she had some kind of gastrointestinal problem for months because she was only 11 and had never had a period yet. So that, and then but it's the moments, I would say, in those situations. It's, you know, you know the situation you're going at. It's the little moment within the situation when, you know, when I walk in and I'm talking to this little girl, she's just a little girl. And, you know, do you have any questions? And she asked me if she could bring her teddy bear with her.
Yeah, I remember that part.
You know, those are so it's those little poignant moments within the situation where you know, you go home and of course you look at your own kids and so but it is those kinds of things. I think burnout, though, comes from just like you said, the constant barrage of humanity that flows through your doors. And no matter what you do, it's like a tsunami. And it's like, you know, that little kid on the beach who's throwing back one fish at a time. And somebody says, well, you know, you can't save them. They're like, well, I saved one. And that's great. But really, over time, when it just is a wave that just keeps rolling in,
so
that's when it's, you just think, I just can't do this anymore.
It's
so
the futility,
there's two different levels,
isn't it? Like you used futility before. I think that's a perfect word, because I think it's easy to be invested in something where you feel and see that you're making a difference. And you can feel a sense of contribution. Like one of my main things that I want to feel is useful, like just simply useful in whatever thing that I'm doing. And it seems such a simple word, but that is important to me. But I think when you don't feel that you are making a difference or a significant difference, it's actually changing the picture of the tsunami of people. It is, you start going, is the cost to my like physical, emotional, mental health, you know, it becomes more difficult to say that I'm willing to pay the cost, isn't it?
Yeah. But you know, the people who do it year in and year out, I went back into the clinic not long ago, and there were people that I had worked with 25 years ago that are still there, and we knew each other and we hugged, and they, to me, are such, I can't even use the word hero. I guess people stay, in doing that kind of work for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Maybe they're heroic, maybe they're not, but I do know plenty of people in the field who feel so committed, no
Yes.
matter what, no matter whether they saved, one fish and they can really drill down to that one moment in one day where one patient said, thank you.
Yeah.
And they know that. And I think now that I'm older, I can do that much better than I could when I was younger. I
Interesting.
saw one of your podcasts was about being perfection and being a perfectionist and needing to meet your
Yep.
goals. And, when you're young, and I was maybe in my, I don't know, maybe late 30s when I decided, when the burnout, then the wave came rolling over me. But now I do think about every little fish. It's the beauty of getting older. And at that point, I said, I am not doing enough. And I'm not, and I think that was my youthful ignorance saying, oh, you have to go do something where you can make a huge impact. It's like ego, right?
Yeah.
And now I don't really feel that way. I do feel like there's just those moments of connection that you make and that one thank you. And that's enough for me now. But the people who've been able to do it all along, man, they're amazing. They're just amazing.
I admire people like that. Yeah. I think I'm reading a book, I've read a book. I've got it with me somewhere called The Upgrade. It's by a psychiatrist, and she talks about how our brain changes as we hit midlife and beyond. And I'm not sure if it's that book or another one that I've just read because they all kind of meld in together now. But she talks about that in our 20s and 30s, like we are literally wired to mate, procreate, build a family if we, have the desire to and ability to. And then as we hit that midlife, so we can also it's almost like identity forming. So our teens, our 20s, our 30s, it's a lot about that outward kind of like, where am I in the world? What ladder am I climbing? Where do I want to get to myself, et cetera, et cetera. And then we go through this midlife transition, and then all of a sudden it's much more about, it's not external ego driven, it's contribution driven.
Right.
And that makes so much sense to me. Like I sense that in myself. I'm only really just on the cusp of the freedom from the really intense mothering years. So my girls are 18 and 19. I'm like, as of Friday, I officially have 2 adults. Well, in Australia, we say 18 is adulthood, but anyway.
Same.
So it's interesting to hear you say that, because it's like I can understand how when the ego is driving that, like I need to do something big and that kind of thing, it needs to be a big change or a significant bloody blah contribution.
Yeah.
But now you can
career
take
move,
that.
whatever.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh God. I'm just exhausted thinking like that.
No, I don't even care anymore.
I'm like, whatever.
I'll color with old people. I don't care. I taught at an Ivy League school. it doesn't matter. I'll go color with you if you want to color.
You know what? I've been really, because I had my own business for 7 years. I don't even know when, like 2011 I started it, when my daughters were quite young. My dad had just passed away, moved to the States, blah, blah, blah. And I just see so much of a difference because I've only just come back into business this year, or beginning of this year. And it's such a different, it's my first version of business was grow and scale and rah, 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 and massive impact and blah, 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 like very ego driven. And now I'm like, I just want to have beautiful conversations where I learn something and connect with someone. I want to write beautiful copy that speaks about the people that I'm working with, like the healers and helpers of the world. And I want to do something nice and creative. And then after that, I'd like to get on my motorbike and ride away. My needs are so, it's like this sense of enoughness rather than growth. And I'm like, so much more peaceful.
Although I did go out on a limb, writing something so controversial. It's because that part of me also came out, know, and I self-published. So this is my, I paid for my own work. I wasn't going to wait for a publisher to, beg them to say, is this, no, this is my gift.
Yeah.
This is my gift. Am I going to make millions of dollars? No. Am I, so you really do want to make a meaningful contribution. And yes, I wrote under a pseudonym.
Yes.
Because I was advised to do that for safety reasons, not just for myself and my family, but for me, it was about patients.
Yes.
Because and it was a perfect thing to write about. I can't tell you about patients.
No.
I can't. How do I do that? But how do we also tell you what we really do if we can't be genuine about the real stories that we hear? So this is the conundrum that I came up against. And I also thought, oh my goodness, all right, it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
I can write these things. I can change people's name. I don't even remember people's real names anyway.
No, exactly.
And
they're
if
part
I
of the
saw
tsunami.
somebody, I don't remember but I remember the stories. And and some of them I would, kind of cluster together form a character, to form characters in the book and to make things progress. But they were all true stories that lived inside me.
Yes.
So yes, but I was willing to be really controversial as a younger woman. I wouldn't have written. No, I couldn't even begin to write this. But as a, woman of a certain age, you start to say, fuck it. I am writing this.
Fuck it.
Because it has to be written. I hope that I'm not hurting anybody's privacy by telling this story. And I'm hopeful that if you do see yourself in this story, that you understand what a gift your experience is giving to the world because I can't, as a nurse, I'm not allowed to speak of those things.
No.
And yet, how else are we supposed to be genuine? It has to be real, but it was and it was a leap, and I still worry, but I do hope that the women's stories that I've told, that they're able to say, share it. It's going to help somebody. And I have hopefully disguised people's, particular information enough.
Yes. I feel like you've walked that line very well, because when I first started reading, I was thinking, how have you been able to share, same thing, patient confidentiality? It's like, how, and then you explain about, these are stories, like multiple times I've seen this one kind of character and I've put multiple people together and all of those things. And I was like, so good, because you lift the curtain and we get to see behind something that a lot of people I know will have stereotypes and completely, untrue, incorrect misinformation about, or assumptions about. There's all the taboo, but you've lifted the curtain, allowed us to see behind it with the huge spectrum of experiences. And I still think that it's the contribution thing, because you talk about your mum a bit in the book about, how her generation, that was like hard won privilege of being a woman who worked after kids and all of those things. And I feel like when you told those stories, I got a sense of that little kind of thread of like steel in your spine that is the part of you that wants to tell this story, because it has to challenge people's assumptions. And like I said, I challenge anyone to read it and be firmly in one extreme camp or the other.
Yeah. You should be uncomfortable.
Yes.
Should be uncomfortable.
And that
if
is
you
brilliant.
and I feel like so many people on both sides are so righteous that they have it figured out, and that the rest of the world, you should be uncomfortable. If you are super staunch pro-choice person, there should be some things in there that really make you, shake in your shoe. They did me. And on the other side as well.
Same thing. Yep.
So getting too complacent with, I know how it should be. Oh, do you? Do you really? No, you don't.
And come back to walk a mile in another woman's shoes, right? Like you really do tell the stories in a way where I'm like, like if I was in the same position, like I would want to have access to this being a choice that I could make for myself. If I, really made me really try emphasize different, life circumstances. one thing that you said before we started recording, I said to you, you're happy to share your kind of midlife journey and the things, and you've kind of shared a bit about, how things have changed I love how you say a woman of a certain age. I think, fuck that. It's like, what does that even mean? It's like, that begs the question, what's a certain age and what is appropriate for a woman at any age? Anyway, we'll leave that there. I think I've challenged that one enough on this podcast. But I'm interested, because you just shared you're a grandmother to, did you say 4-month-old? 4-month-old?
Yes, to a 4-month-old baby girl. Yes.
And you said some of the things that you've experienced as part of working in women's health are now kind of taking on a different meaning. What did you mean by
totally.
that? Yeah.
Well, I had just released this book last fall, and about abortion.
Yes.
And then, my daughter, right as it was being published, said, "Mom, I'm pregnant," which was so exciting. And she's in such a good place with it. She was 30 years old. She has a great job and a great husband. And, she's financially stable, all the things that, lend themselves to this being a happy thing. So, so this book comes out, and I think people think, and as your head is in writing, I mean, writing was such an immersive experience for me, and it's a soul journey unto itself, right?
Yes.
And thinking about, what I was writing about, and then to hold my newborn baby granddaughter in my arms, and thinking about how lucky she was. And then the first thing I thought was, I wish that all babies could be this safe and loved.
Yeah.
And how we're forcing babies into a world where they cannot be. So it was interesting for me, because I thought about, and I felt myself being maybe like a pro-lifer for a moment in time, like, well, how could I hold this precious angel and kill another one, and it does, if you really are owning the depth of your soul, you have to ask yourself that. You do. And you don't want to repress that or suppress that thought. And so it was a deeply personal moment to hold this newborn, knowing that there are a lot of other newborns that weren't allowed to come in the first place by choice or not.
Yes.
And then there's other ones that are being born into circumstances that just suck. And then there's this one, so it comes back to, when I wrote pretty much in the beginning of the book about weeding my garden, and how, if you really thought about ripping out, I want this plant, I don't want that plant. Oh, look at these plants, I don't want that. Oh, I like that. We do that. And it's a stewardship, and it's not easy.
No.
Gardening, we do it without thinking, but we haven't really thought about the stewardship that is involved in, life potentials and little things sprouting in bodies.
Yes.
So to me, that was just it's a really profound and difficult honesty that we have to come to if we're ever going to be able to resolve this. And, myself, I was given this gift, of being alive. Well, what, and, my mother said, I really wasn't thrilled when I was pregnant with you, my third child. She said, but my gosh, what would I do without you? And I've answered that question quite a bit in the book too, of how I've come to terms with that. And, the what ifs and the things that you look at that may have happened, but didn't. And so they didn't, and so the journeys that we take are also so unique, and it's a miracle. It's all a miracle.
Yeah. I loved the gardening analogy, because I've become, I think it's because I started my career in quite what can be a traumatic profession, not always, but that kind of quite full on. And I also think that it's like the perimenopause thing where I'm being drawn to sort of simplify and everything, but I have become such a soft-hearted person about even gardening. I know damn well that there's a garden out there in sore need of some tending. We're going into a drought as well, so it's not going to bear well anyway. But I know that there's plants that are crowding other plants that really ideally need to be pulled out. But as I'm pulling them out, I'll be like, oh, maybe I should move you somewhere else. Like I'm so sooky. No, I won't. That's diminishing. But that's
soft.
my reality. Like very, very tender about everything.
Tender.
Yeah, tender. That's actually a better word for it. It's like very present to. And I think, I don't know, it's the cycles of life. And you know, as you get older, you realize the things that you thought were going to be forever and ever and ever. Like I think there's a lot of kind of grief and surrender about, you know, going through transitions like perimenopause or losing a parent or like any of those big transition points. But your story in the book about the gardening analogy was such a good one because it made me realize that gardening, pulling out a plant, is much simpler than what you're talking about with an abortion clinic, because no one says, no, that's not true. There is some people, but very small amount of people will say that plant has feelings. You've done something wrong, which causes harm to another living thing that has feelings, right? It's only just because all of us have different meanings and stories about what it is to be either alive or a human, or, you know, all of the kind of definitions of when life starts, etc., particularly the Aristotle one, that it just makes it so much more charged and complicated because there's so much more attachment to, really when you come down to it, it is a stewardship is a really good word. I so love language. Yeah,
me too. And it's hard. It's hard to make. No one's saying these decisions are easy.
No, I think that that's the other thing, that sometimes when you do hear a very pro-life kind of an extreme pro-life person, it's often either explicitly said or implied that women who choose to have abortions do it with no thought and like, you know, I'm just, you know,
some do.
Yeah, and some do. Some do.
Some do.
And a lot
it's not
don't.
really for us to
judge whether that's right or wrong. Which was what I was going to say. It's like,
exactly.
It's not actually up to you to say whether that's right or wrong because it's not your body. It's not your
That
choice.
was my naivety too. I was naive about that. I thought, oh, everybody's coming to this with such like a you know, having thought it through and like pondered and really, you know, no, some people are like, oh, damn. There's this new term I never heard. I heard from a young woman from South Africa of being a fetus deleter. Have you heard that one? Anna's going to be a fetus deleter.
You're adding to my language, my vocabulary.
I know, it was new for me. She even put that on her, you know, thing. She said, I had to explain to this 59-year-old woman what a fetus deleter was. So there, and maybe that is just being cavalier. Maybe that is that, you know, tough kid veneer. Like, I'm not going to think about this very hard. And if you really got under the surface, maybe there was depth, more to it. But sometimes I'm from what I saw, I was pretty surprised. You know, I did have the girl, you know, who I wrote pretty specifically about, you know, where I was like, oh, okay, you just didn't like the way your dress was laying, huh?
That was the one that really kind of was like, whoa. I'm not sure if we're talking about the same one, but it was a lady who was going to get married in a month.
And pregnant immediately, but she just didn't. The dress.
So it was inconvenient to be 6 weeks pregnant at the wedding.
So there's that judgment in ourselves, like,
exactly.
The assumption. It was judgment because definitely you know, I have trouble with that persona, you know, and I talked about her being Kim Kardashian's BFF and
yes.
And so I have my biases around that for sure. And you know, we can't really go there. We can't really. And we do. So everybody has judgment. We're all judgy.
Yeah, of course. And
but that was my naivety as well.
Yeah. Oh God, no. The older I get, the more I understand how bloody judgmental and biased I am. Like I just go, oh my God, there's another thing that I just assumed that's actually up for negotiation or challenge. Anywho, can you please tell everybody where they can find your website and a copy of your book? Because I know lots of people are going to want to grab a copy.
Yes. Oh, that would be lovely. And also I'm getting ready to put it out in Spanish translation just before I
Oh,
forget,
very
because of
cool.
what's going on in Latin America. Countries are legalizing abortion.
Really?
Argentina's
Wow.
had a huge, they call it the green wave. It's been very energizing and crazy. They overturned the anti-abortion laws there. They're following suit in several other Latin American countries.
There
It's a
you
very
go.
exciting time there. So I really wanted the book to be
Yes,
in Spanish as
available.
well.
Yeah, cool.
So my website is www.theviewfromtheclinic.com. Super easy.
Yes.
And the book is available on Amazon. We have Barnes and Noble. I have it on a variety of platforms, but I think everybody knows Amazon.
Amazon's, yeah.
I did a regular book, an ebook, and I also did an audiobook that I self-narrated.
Cool.
So I know, because I know a lot of people love audiobooks, they'd much rather
Yeah.
multitask. So I had a lot of fun
Yeah.
recording that. Turns out I do have a background in theater
I was going
when
to
I was
say,
young.
you have got a bit of a vibe about you of
Yeah.
being a bit of a
And, I was
performer.
a
So,
lecturer.
yeah,
So,
yeah, of
being a
course.
lecturer and having some theater experience, who knew down the line who on earth would have imagined that, my nursing career and, some of those things would actually come into being. So it is available as an audiobook as well.
Yeah, very cool. Very cool. I really encourage everyone. I just want to reiterate, when Patrice sent me a copy of the book pre-interview, I was like, oh, I don't know what I'm getting myself in for. And I did have that sense of trepidation, but it was actually a really good, light-hearted / heartbreaking / viewpoint challenging book. And I feel expanded for having read it. So thank you, because it's been very, very, very personally useful, and just made me aware of a whole other thing of stereotypes that were wrong. Which I love, because I love status quo challenging. So thank you for challenging mine.
Oh, you are so welcome.
Thank you so much. It's been such a joy to connect. We did try and do this a few times, but anyway, we've got it now.
I know. We finally got together. I'm so excited.
I have to say, I haven't recorded podcasts for probably 6 weeks now, and we are 2 days away from spring, and I always feel this beautiful start energy, like that freshness, and I'm like, oh, podcast day. So I can't help but think,
because we're flipping to fall to autumn, and the kids are going back to school, and the leaves are changing. So it is that change time of year,
transition time, definitely.
Yeah,
love it. It's been a joy. Thank you so much.
Really has.
Thanks so much for listening into today's episode. If you love the show, as I hope you do, please take the time to subscribe on your favourite pod listening platform and rate and review. And for bonus points, if you have a friend or someone who popped to mind as you were listening to this episode, why not hit the share link wherever you're listening and send them a little love bomb. Like, listen to this. Did you know this is normal? I really, really, really would love to get these beautiful stories into the hearts and ears and minds of so many more midlife mavens. And your help spreading the love is truly, truly appreciated. Thank you so much. I'm Kylie Patchett, your host, and have a spectacular day.